Samech Vav Adar II, Hemshech Chatav Shem Samech Ches, Hemshech Samech Vav, page Kuf Nun Vav.
So we saw the union of two Hanoge, that it's Efsha Lahaki and Gedula Shaleda, Gedula Saboire. We saw in the name of the Kedah Sefer Kedah Shitra. And we saw that one was the Hanoge Tmidius B'derech HaTeva. That's how we can come to appreciate the greatness and the koich ein seif that there is in the brio mitzad the hanhoge tivius. And we saw that that's inyan it's beli hefsek or beli shinui. So it's evidence to inyan that there's no change in the etzem bodies themselves, in the etzem inyanim atzmom, and there's also no hefsek in time. The processes of the Bria go on without interruption, and they go on timelessly. The only suggestion that there might be any stop is only if that was Barotzen HaBoire. But the way he created it is that they go without any efsek, but I mean stop or interruption in Zman. So we saw the Be'ikah that's Nika in the Tzvah HaShamayim, in the Shemesh, V'Areach, and Keichovim, and all the planets and the heavenly bodies, that they have a inyan, the Sviva, the Sivu, the Sivu Tabidi, and it has no shinui in it, they never meshana what they do in the etzem tafkid that they have. And then we saw that it's also beli hefsek. And the chiddush was that each one of them being a created being and a Baal Gevul, then based on the famous klal of the Rambam, something which is Baal Gevul be'emes, in its very essence, can't act or can't eventually produce inyonim which are believable. And therefore we saw that the whole uninterrupted continuation and the function of the whole Tzvah Shamayim without any shinui and without any hefsek in time, well, that's a defiance of the klal of the bria, that something which is Baal must eventually come to some sort of an end or undergo some sort of a change and a shinui in its very essence, because it's limited. And therefore we saw that was the union of the two koiches of the Eibishter. On the one hand, the koich hagvul, to bring about each individual in with its own limited functions, and then there's the koich ein seif, which is manhi, the whole union that conducts all of them together and rules over and governs the whole function of them together. But that's the koich ein seif. So we saw that was the union of the koich blikvu of hagvul, the union of the ein seif midib inyan hagvul, and that's the gedulas haboira that we study carefully, the whole function of the teva. And we saw that in the Tzvah Halamata, in this item in detail. We also saw that that union is noticeable, but not in each individual member of a species, but in the general species themselves. And in each individual member of a species, then there's a deterioration to the point of a beetle of the hemshech, both in function and in time. But in Lamaila, it's much more clear, the union of the Bligvul and the Gvul, because even though they are Bligvul, they're limited entities, nonetheless they function openly, even the Bli Hefsek, Bli Shinui. Therefore we see the Gadlus HaPoiri Davk in the Tzvah Shamayim in that regard greater. Over here, but Lamata, B'Teicha Oilam Hazeh, we see it in what we call the union for min, that they're Kayomin V'min, not be ish, that's to say not in the individual, but in the general species, we see the union of the Koach Ein Sof and the Koach HaGvul. That's the greatness, according to the Akedah, that you can appreciate from the Inyan Ateva, because all of those Inyanim fit under the general concept of Teva. One of the Inyanim of Teva is that it's fixed in a certain oifen, a function called Hazman. That's one of the Inyans, or one of the governing usages of the word Teva. That when you say something is Teva, then you imply that it goes on in a certain way the whole time without, under those two general factors. On the one hand, it doesn't alter what it does, it doesn't change in itself or in its function. It doesn't have any interruption in time, it just keeps going the whole, what we can picture endlessly, Ba'ifim Koseh. And that's the union of Teva, Ba'ifim Klolim. And Shalom appear in the word Teva, that is from the Russian Tubu B'Yamsut, that we say in the Shir Sayam, Tubu B'Yamsut, that they were drowned in the water. And the word Tubu is from the word Litvoa, which Litvoa means to drown. So the whole word Teva is based on the word in Rosh Kodesh, meaning to sink underwater and not be noticeable anymore. So what that implies is that the Teva is a whole name, and therefore it's written in certain great Svarim. Down it says that really there's no such thing as Teva, because Teva is only a name that the observing human beings look at these functions and call them Teva. But really everything is the Eibishter. The Eibishter is being mechadish that every second, the Eibishter is keeping it going, etc. It's all him. But maybe the word Teva is only a word to describe those inyonim which we just mentioned, that something that happens continuously, and it happens in a way that doesn't alter what it does, then human beings call that Teva. And why do they use the word Teva? Because they want to imply that it's something that's unable to know why does it really do that, and it just does it without really being made aware to the seers and the observers why it has to be that way. And that's Russian tubu. It's literally covered over and unrecognizable what is the essence of power behind the whole thing. And that's Inyan of Elikus. But when you look at the Inyan of Teva, or what we call Teva, you don't see the Elikus Bagoloi unless you misbeinen in the right way. And therefore you call it Teva, you give it the name Teva. So that's what he means, that from the Anhoga, which we call Teva, or that way of running the whole creation, that we give the name nature, you can come to appreciate the greatness of the Eibishter. But to a certain extent, you have to look beyond the Teva, and you have to study carefully the different aspects of that, and then realize how they indicate a Koach Ein Sof being united with a Koach HaGvul. However, the other way that we come to appreciate the greatness of the Eibishter, hu mi'anhoge shelamayla mi'ateva. Well, that's from the conduct that the Eibishter also conducts the world at certain points, and certain zmanim, in a way which is beyond Teva. V'kamoi b'nei shitzias mitrayim, v'kriyas yam suf v'kahai gavna, shehu inyan shidud ha'marochetz, וביטל הטבע, פוצע ניקר גדלוס הפועלוי אויד בייסר מהנהוגס הטבע. So the Rebbe says that the times, this is not continuously, but there are certain zmanim known to the Eibishter where he reveals the Koach which is completely beyond the whole union of Teva. In other words, a Teva we saw as a union of the Gvul with the Bli Gvul. The Iludin, from a Mailamia Teva, means the Koach HaBli Gvul Bilvad. And it's Mavatil, the Inyan HaGvul. Because the Inyan HaTeva, as we said, is a way that things don't change. So water, for example, runs ahead in a river, it doesn't stop and form a wall. If the water all of a sudden turned into two walls on either side, and the whole people walk through between it, then that's an Indian of Gilui, a koyach to be Mishana, the whole Indian of the Teva. But that indicates that the Teva is really batil in the hands of some higher koyach. It's not an absolute power in its own right. And therefore that's called Bitul HaTeva, which means that at that particular moment you see that really the whole Indian of Teva has lost its power altogether, and there's a ruling power which just changed the Indian of Teva and made a Gilui completely outside the whole rules and the whole normal functions of the Teva. Now remember, that's a koyach ha'ain seif mamish, bli Gilui in the gvul, no other causes a bitul, a nullification, and a lack of function on the part of the gvul, or the koyach Hogish shall be Teva. And so there was a deliberate, that's a inyan from Bezer Nika, God was Havere Utbiyesa in a much greater and much more visible way than in the Hogish Teva. So we have to ask, why is it the Taki in Azaway it's Nika, the Hanogish Aboirei more than it is in the Indian of Teva? Why would that be? So we should suggest that the point is that each Indian has got its own Maila. We're not saying that the one has a Maila and the other has no Maila. But we're saying that in one is more Nika, the Indian of the greatness of the Eibishter, than the other. And Nika means observable, or to be seen and recognized with the powers of the observer. When an act like Kriyas Yamsuf happens, then the person sees a koyach which is completely beyond his whole experience in the world, which is Teva, and he sees a thing which is Mafatel, the Indian of Teva. So he sees a Indian Blikvul, and it's observable to him directly. So in that respect, the greatness of the Boire, how he is beyond Gvul and Blikvul, but that's not in the normal observing power of the creative being, because he's a Baal Gvul B'Etzem Mahusay. All of a sudden he sees something which is Gamri Heper. His whole Mahus, and he's Heper the whole Mahus of the function of the Bria. And therefore he sees the Blikvul, well, that causes in him a spilers and a tremendous reaction to Elikus, more than when he looks at the Inyanim which are closer to home by him, because he sees in them the meaning from Gvul, and he lives in a Inyan Shavul. And therefore, in that regard, that's what the Rebbe means, that Nika Gadlus HaBoirei B'Yesa Mi Ba'anogas HaTeva. Now the truth of the matter is that there's a big mile in the Inyan from Teva, but we said that that's a union of the Blikvul and the Gvul. And that's a very high Indian, the truth is. And there's another Maila in the Indian of the Anogas HaTeva. So we should suggest that the Anogas HaTeva expresses another great Maila in divinity, and that is that divinity never changes. There's a pasuk which says, Ani Havaya Lo Shonisi. It's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, that he says that I never alter and I never have altered. In that Indian of the Teva, which always goes on the whole time, we see the koyach of Elikus, how it is in Mitzad Etzem definition of Elikus. That Ani Havaya Lo Shonisi. That's a tremendous, deep understanding that comes from the Anogas HaTeva. And like we saw, there's another aspect which has also got a very high mila to it, that it's a union of the two opposite koyachs of Bli Gvul and Gvul. So why would we say that Davki in the Anogas HaMila Me'ateva Nika Haviyesa the Gadlus HaBoyer? And the pshat is because in the Anogas HaTeva, like we said, the Mensch has to have a long training of himself to come to understand those inyanim, and he's got to have a deep hisboinus, and not always does he reach out his bonus, not always is he deep in his mind in these bonus the way it should be. Don't always come to realize, or there are times when he doesn't want to realize because of his gabus of the nefesh habahami, or mitzad other inyanim, all sorts of nisyanis in the life of the man, and he doesn't see in the Indian Ateva the unbelievable greatness of the Abish, which is really there. And particularly mitzad the Maila Vaniya Vailo Isha Shonisi, that if he takes that Indian and is misbeaten how that is in Elikus, and that's a very profound Indian in Elikus, maybe just as profound as the fact that the Abish is bleak wool and can indicate his bleak wool. And therefore, the Maila is that when is a Nes, what a Nes is from Russian elevation or lifting up high onto a high place, and therefore a flag which is flown in the heights is called in Russian Kodesh a Nes. And therefore the flag of a ship is called in Russian Kodesh is called the Nes Hasfina. It's not called the Degel Hasfina, it's called the Nes Hasfina. And why is that? Because it's a thing that goes up into the high and it elevates above the ship and everybody looks upwards in order to see it. So we see from that the word Nes means something elevated and high in its content, but it's noticeable immediately to everybody. If you just look upwards, then you see immediately the flag at the top of the ship. And the word nisayon is also from the same word, to be tried. And the whole purpose of the is to trying a mensch, what you see one in the plan. A mensch gets into the Indian of a trial, but the whole purpose of that is to elevate him, to make him even greater than he was before. Therefore it's called a nisayon. They call it elevating of the mensch to a much higher Indian than he was before. What time do they start that class over?
9.
What time do they start over there?
Usually around 9, whenever the rabbi comes. The rabbi comes and
It starts at 9? Yeah, it's later than that?
So between 1:45 and 9.
1:45? Well, there's a big difference between 1:45
Between 1:45 and 9. So, sometimes the rabbi comes, between then. So
I don't think we should learn in this room anymore. I think we can get back into the other room, it's much better. I see too much here, it costs me too much. But during in Beishia I had the same problem. I could see what the heck goes on over there. Just for the sake of somebody, would you mind just going over there and see what's going on? I just said the governor said that he doesn't want to see people jumping around, but he wants to see them sitting down and using their time properly. Okay? Somebody is making all sorts of exercises and jerking his arms in the air.
It's an African thing.
Just tell them that they should sit down and learn until the teacher comes if he's not there. And if he's already there, that's more of a disgrace. Huh?
I see them opening the Sfarim.
Opening up Sfarim? Oh, yeah? Anyway, just bring me back a report of what's going on over there. So therefore, I ask yourself the question, why is it that Dafki shows the great milas in the Anoga Satira? The thing is that Dafki, when it's Palik rule, it's much more noticeable to the men. And that's what the Rebbe says, that it's Nika, Harbi Yosa, the Gedula Saboire, and the Inif Nisim, which are Palik rule, because they take you out of the whole Anoga Satira, which is the what he called the Gewoinshat, that is the regulars, customness of the mensch, and Dafki being accustomed to it, therefore he doesn't really notice it, and he tends to just treat it as a thing, what you call, a thing taken for granted. But when he sees a Nes, then that's the idea of elevation, and
you're learning now, we're learning that.
It's that's the idea of elevation, and that's the concept of a Nes, where the mensch is elevated out of his whole situation, and he sees something which is also elevated, the normal function of the creation. Therefore, the inyan of Anes has got that mila that is more nika to the men. And since we're talking here about the Be'ika, the Anoga of the Eivishter or Lagabi, the world, then there's a mila in that in Nisim we see the fact that the Eivishter is in charge of the whole Inyan HaTeva and that he can alter it according to his will. He shows us inyanim which are beyond our whole way of experiencing. Yeah, therefore, we see and we praise the greatness of the Eivishter much more than we do Mitzad Anoga HaTeva. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no mila in the Anogas HaTeva, or that ultimately we maybe find ways to explain that there's even a hidden greatness, at least in the Inyan of the Anoga Al Piteva, and the Inyan of Bittul HaTeva through these Nisim, which are Lamayla HaTeva, is B'ikar in order to wake up and to stir up all the created beings into a recognition of how really the Eivishter can run the world. Also, Lamayla HaTeva, it doesn't have to be B'derech HaTeva, and it's in a way which Lagabi the Teva is an elevated form of revelation. And therefore the mensch goes out of his, what you might call, his limitations, al-idei what he sees, the Inyan, the Nisim, Shelamayla HaTeva, and it's brought down in Siddur. I mean, it's foreign that that's one of the whole purposes of the Nisim, because brought down in the Gemara, the Eivishter Kaviyochel doesn't like making Nisim, as it were. Where he can avoid a Nes, then he does, Kaviyochel. And so when the Eivishter does actually show a Nes, then the purpose of that is to elevate the whole creation, Ika, the Odom, through his observation of the Elikus, how it's Pagoli, Ha'abiyesha. That's what the Rebbe says, that it's Nika, Ha'abiyesha, the Gedulas HaBoirei, than it is in the Anhogas HaTeva. But for the reasons we pointed out, that Kufa needs to be carefully defined. Was it a pshat and was it a beer in that? Well, Ahovin Shirish Inyan Beis Hanhogis Hanal. In order to understand the Inyan of these two concepts, or these two ways that the Eivishter conducts himself, the Gabi the world, Shorik Lachtim Tchila, we have to begin with a pasuk will soon mention it. However, Lefisa, since it's going to take a bit of time till we get to the end of the Maimon, or to the middle of it, so therefore we have to just give a prelude. It's on that basis that the Rebbe answers the kasha that we began with. I know that we saw that there were two Rosh Hashanahs. There was a Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei, and there's a Rosh Hashanah now of Nisan being introduced by this pasuk. So we asked, on Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei, that's when we seem to emphasize the whole Inyan of Rosh Hashanah more, and even on Nisan, we don't seem to emphasize the concept of Rosh Hashanah so much, and yet nonetheless the pasuk says that it's a Reish Chadashim, it's the beginning of, and counting, we count from Nisan Davki. If we count the year, then we count Davki from Nisan, meaning that by the time we get to Tishrei, we're already in the 7th month, as we pointed out yesterday. But the Torah says that the word Rosh, as we explained yesterday, means a Inyan Kloli, which is koilin itself all the details. So there's two different klolis detail kilu heads or general points which are koilin themselves. Many derivative details, and that's the two inyanim of Tishrei and Nisan. So we're going to see that in Tishrei, the generality of the head of the year, the Rosh, which is koilin all the inyanim, is be'ikah b'negeh that inyan of the Hanoga Al Pi HaTeva. In other words, that the Eivishter made the world in such a way that it functions according to all the Chukei HaTeva that he put into it. And we have to make a world on Tishrei through Tshuva, through Maisim Tevim, V'oid Inyanim. We have to take on ourselves to make a world that should be a world that will function the way the world is meant to function, according to the way the world was meant to function, Al Pi Torah. And Al Pi Kol Inyanim from Rotzen HaBoirei, wherever the Eivishter agrees to literally give back the whole world again, to start all over again, based on the agreement that he makes Kaviyochel through the bris of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Chulu, that he makes with all the created beings, that they're going to keep the world functioning functioning the way he wants it to be emes al pi Torah. Well, that's the Indian of Hanogas HaTeva Davke, the world should be a world the way it is, according to Chukei HaTeva, and how those are linked to the Chukei HaTorah. In other words, that all the Hatzlacha and all the proper function, it should be al pi Torah, is all linked to the proper function al pi Torah. So that's the Indian for Tishrei. And here the Indian for Nisan, the Indian for Rosh Hashanah, Koilu, Kol HaProtim, Kol HaInyonim, going to get to L'mayla Miyah Teva, and to the Indian for Nisim. But for that is a simon that Nisim go on the whole time and need to go on the whole time. And the Father has to be a special Rosh Hashanah, for the Indian Nisim, and in order that the Indian for Nisim, they should go on and express themselves in a way that they cause people to go out of the Hanogas HaTeva in order that they should come back later into the Hanogas HaTeva with a new chayas and a new bren and a new teikef. When a person sees Inyonim completely beyond Teva, then that causes him to return with a new bittul to Rotzon Havayim. And that's the for Nisan of Nisan. Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah. And then what's interesting to notice that we have to count the months of the year from Nisan. But that's just by way of a Musa Haskel. That indicates that a Yid has to count his whole life and he has to reckon all of his inyonim based on concepts of L'mayla Miyah Teva. He has to realize that the Inyan of a Yid is not to be completely limited in Teva, even though he may be found in Teva. But he has to know that if he wants and if he devotes himself to the emes kavona of the Eibishter, then he can be L'mayla Miyah Teva, even though he's found basically in the world of Teva. And he can know that at any moment it's possible for it to be a Inyan for Nanes, and that even though we don't necessarily base our whole Inyan on Nanes, because the Gemara says ain't same chin al Nanes, you're not allowed to just rely on Nanes, but to know inside that there can be Nisim, and even to Levakish Nisim, that the Eibush should give us Nisim, that's part of a Yid and part of the whole even of a Jewish life. And as we see, the whole kiyum of the Jewish people is one huge net. And the whole Inyan of the function of the Torah over the generations to keep Yidden the way they are. That's a Inyan for Neis L'mayla Miyah Teva, which means that a Yid is be'emes, he's be'etzem L'mayla Miyah Teva. So therefore, when it comes to counting, we count in Oivim, which reminds us that we're L'mayla Miyah Teva. We count from this and not from Tishrei. As no doubt everybody will be misbearing in that, and everybody draw the correct conclusions therefrom. What that means is that at any moment there can be a net, which means that it's proper at any moment to expect a net, which means that it's proper at any moment to trust in the Eibush that he will give Nisim, and even to ask him in Levakish that he should give Nisim. And therefore, that's the answer to the whole crazy situation in which we find ourselves, that we have to be batuach and somuk batuach, taken from Yad Mamish Eibush that machen Nisim, that there be Nisim L'mayla Miyah Teva. It's like it was by Kriyas Yam Suf, that the Yidden was standing by the shores of the Yam Suf, and it was a bit of a matter of the Mitzrayim, one of the biggest, the biggest power in the world with the whole of its army, when they couldn't do it, was coming after them, and here they are standing on the banks of a sea, and they've got to go somewhere, but the only way to go is to go ahead. And so therefore they didn't know what should be done. How is that shaykh? This came along Nachshon ben Aminadov. He said, well, we have to say there's got to be a net, and he just jumped into the sea. And Berega, when he did that, it's given a net. And so it's brought down in cities that people didn't really expect, or didn't know. They didn't really know that nest was going to occur. And therefore the whole Inyan for Kriyas Yam Suf, even though it's a huge thing in Jewish history, and in the whole Inyan of Jewish religion, it wasn't anticipated, and it happened in a moment like that. The whole Inyan for Kriyas Yam Suf. And in that word of God, it's got a mile even over Matan Torah, because Matan Torah, Yidden knew that they were going out. in order to get to Matan Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu told him there's going to be Matan Torah. And according to the Medrash brought down by the Ran, they even counted the days. That's the whole basis of the mitzvahs. And that's like the schar that we have. That's how we earn the mitzvahs. And Sfiras Ha'ima, because you were counting the days that they were going to get the Torah, etc. etc. When it comes to Riches, Matan Torah was already, as you might say, a plan. As people knew that was going to occur and they were waiting for it. Over the in the middle there was this huge block, and then all of a sudden there's an S completely lamaila mi hateva, or that's even from the mile from Kriyas Yamsu, and that implants in Yidden the knowledge and the emuna and the hanocha, and the assumption that there can be and will be nitzim. It's just a shaila, the ways of regular, the Abish is going to choose to do it. In Mamela, that's the answer to the whole Jewish existence. The Yidden have always not relied on Nissim, but they've already known that their whole basis in this world is Nissim. And therefore that's the Indian of counting from Nisan and basing ourselves on Nisan, which is the Anoga Shalomayla Miyah, or the Anoga Shalomayla Miyah Teva. You don't have to worry, the clock is still there and it's running around, we all know that, so it's a good time. Amamina says that in order to understand those two inyonim, we have to understand what was written earlier in the Maimon from Chanukah, that Ner Hashem Nishmas Odom. That the Pasuk tells us in Mishlei that the Neshama of a man is compared to a candle, a nail. Restlessly yearning upwards, but it's always sort of coming downwards and hanging on to the pasila as well. As we saw at Great Arichas in the previous moment, the whole concept of Rotzai V'Shoiv mentioned the first time it's mentioned in that particular moment. But he's boy in the moment after that, that there's a special awakening on the part of the Eibishter Milmayla Lamata, that he awakens the neshama of the Yiddi, how he is down here, Lamata, in other words, he's given koiches Milmayla to wake up and to go out in a form of love and rotzai and yearning for the Eibishter. And then he's also given the power to come back down into the world. There is a Messinas Koyach Gamal's there, and that's when the Inif and Aaron Koyan, that when he used to light the menorah in the Mishkan and the Mikdash, etc. Well, that's a giving a power, Milmayla, Omna, we saw. Ika HaRotzei V'Shu Hu B'Koyach Atzmei V'Yigiyosa Itavke. In our Maimon, which we just finished, we saw that the principle, aim and the principal purpose of Rotzai V'Shoiv, or that's Daki in the power of the Adam himself and his own hard work and his own struggle. Even though there's a Messinas Koyach Milmayla, that's only a lead up or an assistance and a start of a Dika Avedas Daki when a mensch Shemishiageya, that he struggles hard and he works, Liyas B'chinas Ava V'Tshuka L'Elkus, that he struggles and makes an effort to break out of the limitations of the world and to be in a tshuka and a ava to Elikus. V'gam ava rabba, we saw that there's another higher madrega than stam ava, that's what he called in the mind of Vayigash, he called it the ava rabba, unlimited ava, but that's more an ava, which is given no maila, as the author brings in Tanya. Nonetheless, he said that bo davke ali de atircha v'yakia ba'aveda pnimius demoya falei v'tikun ha'nefesh ha'ba'amiyah, that you only get that avarabba, or you only get the matana of avarabba, or you only reach the Canaan which can bring you to be perfected in avarabba, is when you made a tremendous effort on your own part. Only then do you gain the remissibility of unlimited avarabba. And that can only be done if you're prepared in detail in Aveda Pnimius of his Bainanus, his Moyach Leiv, the Inif and Midas Leiv, and Dafki through being Mataki the Onefesh Abrahami, because the Nefesh Abrahami interferes and is a Herem Ve'ester and doesn't allow the Aveda Samoya to reach the lave, or doesn't even allow him to have the Emes Aveda Samoya, because he's locked up in too many Inyanim Studyim, which are Mavalbo. So that was how we saw that the Indian, the Arva and the Rotzoi is Bekoyach Ha'adam, even though he can be given a stirring Momaila to the Indian Rotzoi. But the Emes Rotzoi is no. The Emes Rotzoi is Davkim Me'avidosei Bekoyach Ha'adam Shemishiageya V'atzmai. V'oid we saw Vashoiv Hu Gamkein Bekoyach Atzmai. We saw that the Indian of Shoiv really should be, and ultimate purpose of Shoiv is it should Davkim be Bekoyach Ha'adam himself. And that's even a greater breaking of himself, a greater form of Aveda to come down into the world, Dafki be involved in the Indian of Kabbalah Seil and in Yonim of Mitzvah, Maisis Lamata, Betecho Elam, rather than being in a state of elevation and withdrawal from the world. Ki Amiti is Hashuv, Hu Mitzad Etzem Anishoma, Mitzad Abitul Vishifl Schulu. That the Emes Indian of the Shoiv is really higher than the revealed powers of the soul, Ja'av, Aviyah, and Moyach, and Leiv, and all those Inyanim. In order to get to Emes Shoiv, and to be Mekayim the Emes Rotzen, or the Eibishter in Shoiv, you've got to draw on the Etzem Anishama, which is beyond all of those Inyanim of Ava, Alpi's Bonines, and things of that nature. Because as he pointed out, the Etzem Anishoma is connected with the Etzem Rotzen, Atzmi of Eibishter. So in order to reach into your Etzem Anishoma, then you have to work very, very hard, and you have to give yourself away, Babitl, Gomo, and you have to be Mavater, overlook all of your normal Inyonim, and through that Bitl, even in Ruchnis Advorim, and even in Inyonim from Kedusha, you eventually come to in the Sinus Koya from the Etzem Hanishoma, and he said that's Mitzada Bitl Veshiflas. That's because you give yourself away altogether, you're Mavatel and mashpil your own self and your own interest. Because deep inside the Rotzeh there's a certain, as we saw, self-interest in the whole Inyan. Mashenkin, the Shoiv, is the Emes giving away, as we saw, Hanoches Atzmusay, the putting aside of the self altogether, and we saw that was the key to Kabbalah Seil Malchus Shamayim, or Mitzada Kabbalah Seil Malchus Shamayim Sheboi, the Mishum Zeh Hu B'Bchina Shoiv. He said it all comes Mitzad Bitl Shiflas Kabbalah Seil, which is the Pnimis of which is Hanoches Atzmusay. All of that brings to the Shoiv. So I mean that's quite a list of Inyanim by way of overlooking his own self and coming through that to Agilui Etzem Anishoma, how it's Mushash in the Etzem of the Eibishter, what up there, all that is known as the ultimate purpose, which is Yerida and Kabbalah Seil, Lamata, B'Teich Ha'olam. The Mishum Zehu B'China Shoiv, or Kabbalah Seil Malchus Shamayim, Hu B'Keich Atzmei V'Yigiyos. We pointed out there's also a Nesinus Koyach on that. There's certain Inyanim which lead the mensch through the service Momaila also to come to Kabbalah Seil. But we saw Barichus in our Maimah, Kabbalah Seil is really the effort of the mensch himself, because those things that they help him and assist him to Kabbalah Seil, Behelim Godel. What is Begolu is that he feels the Matthias of the world, and to be hotel to the Melech Ha'elam, then he's got to give himself away entirely in a form of Hanoches Atzmusay and Kabbalah Seil Malchus Shamayim, even though deep inside of it. So at the end of the Maimah, there is a kesher with the Iskashas of the Etzem Anishoma with Etzem Halakus, but the Golui in the what you might call consciousness of the mensch is the Indian that he's got to give himself away, become Kabbalah Seil. Therefore it's Dafki B'Koyach Atzmei even more than the Indian Arotzeh. So that's like a summing up of all the inyanim that we saw. Therefore said the Rebbe Lahovin b'teish was pure klal inyan anal lama tzrichim avida b'koyach atzmei daker or mahu amaylu b'zeh. So he says the whole big huge part of Samech Vav is now going to devote itself. There were all sorts of amazing introductory sections as to why is it that ultimately we have to say we have to have avida b'koyach atzmei, and what is the maylu b'zeh? What is the advantage that the mensch does ultimately all the ikka things that are expected of him, davki with his own power and his own effort, and b'koyach atzmei in a eifan of kabbalah sale, etc., etc. That's the person's been making a lot of movements, and all of a sudden he's moved himself outside. Anyway, maybe I'm confusing it. But anyway, whatever. So, from that, ask yourself the Shaila. The truth is that the Rebbe mentioned this Indian of Veda B'Kur Chatzmi and Al Maimon, and he also mentioned it in those two previous Maimorim, the one from Chanik and the one from what do you call it, from Vayigash. So I thought the Shaila, why all of a sudden here does he go back to the same question, which he already really asked earlier in the Hemshech? What's the union of why do we need a Veda B'Kur Chatzmi on the part of the order? What's the advantage of it? I mean, those questions have been implied throughout quite a lot of what's been set up till now. Why would he say we've got to understand now what teaches is pure? And our question is, what's the need for a Veda B'Kur Chatzmi, and what is the Maila? I mean, that question's already been asked, and we've already given answers to that to a certain extent, if not to a full extent. What also do we build a whole new section? So we have to say, there's a famous Heora from the Rebbe. Also, and he brings it down again in another place in a Maimon. Well, the Rebbe brings down in reference to Samech Vav. And he says that since this Maimon of Chodesh Hazeh starts off a whole new idea, the union of Chodesh Nisan, and the Maila of Hanogish Michutz LeDerech HaTeva, beyond Teva, beyond the limitations of Teva, well, that tends to indicate that that's a great and wondrous thing. That's more nikka than Gedulas HaPoilei, and like we said, you didn't count from this, and that becomes, as it were, the whole, after Yitzis Mitzrayim, that becomes like the whole Inen of Yidden. Then the Hanogish Michutz LeDerech HaTeva is more Maila Mata. Nisim the Eivshter makes them. That's just not nisim. The Eivshter takes things out of in order to stir up the mensch. But for now we see that there's a big emphasis on Maila Lamata Davki. And therefore we have to say that if the Ikka is going to be Mitzad Yidden, the Hanogish of Maila Miateva, why is it that there's a stress that ultimately the whole purpose of Torah and the whole Shleiman and the ganze world and the whole Tachlis Kol Inyanim Davki when the mensch doesn't B'Koyach Atzmei, and what's the Maila B'Zeh? What is the Maila B'Zeh? When we're saying now the whole Ikka Maila would appear to be the Maila Mi'ateva, the Ina Fenisim, and that's more the bittul of everything in front of the Koyach Ein Seif Mamish. Right, so like it's a custom by certain just to stop with a question, leave you with a kasha, so that's what we'll do for the time being, even though we gave a teretz. But so the thing is like this: does anybody?